I speak? Yes, off the record. I would like to I would like to speak about my family, how the family died. I made tables, but I never spoke about each, the members that I know, how they died in different ways. And this should be on record, like my mother's sister who was so well thought of, they were drowned and shoot off in the ocean. Oh, he's not taking it now. Are you
Would you
talking?
please tell me your name?
My name is Mary Ferber. I was born Miriam Fortgang, and I also was called Marisha. That's my Polish name. I lived in Krakow. I come from a large family.
What was your birth date, please?
My birthday was June 15, 1923. I was born in Tarnów, which is about 2 hours from Krakow, where I grew up in Krakow. My mother's family come from Krakow.
And what is your age now, please?
My age is 71 and a half.
Okay. What was life like before the occupation?
Well, I went to school. I remember a pretty happy childhood. We were not well off financially, but I really was not hungry. We had food in the house, but with limited income from my father, we had no luxury, I would say. We lived in a house that belonged to my grandmother. She owned the apartment house. It was about 8 or 10 apartments, and we didn't have to pay rent there. But my mother's family was very well off, and they were very close. My mother was the oldest sister of 10 children, and her youngest sister was financially very well. She always support us and filled in many times, like make a wedding for my sister, educating my older sister to go to a higher. It was like a business school. She was always there when we needed, and we were lucky in this way. Uh,
Did you go to school?
I went to school, and after the school, I would like to go to college and get, which is the normal procedure in America. It wasn't so in Poland because higher education was very expensive. Only very rich people could afford it. So my mother advised me, say, look, if you learn a trade, you can always fall back. If you need to make a living, it'll be good. Everybody was doing something, so I was fortunate that in our building was a dressmaker, and she took me in as an apprentice, and I started working for her and learned the trade, and it worked out fine. I enjoyed doing it, and it came handy eventually. Even after the war in America, where my husband was in the beginning difficult, I did some alteration in my home. So uh,
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I come from a large family of we were 6 brothers and 4 sisters. I lost one sister maybe before the war, and she died of she had pneumonia and she never recovered. But unfortunately, I lost most of my family, including my parents and my sister brother. I was lucky to have one sister and one brother left, and
After the war.
yeah, after the war, and they survived by running away to Russia. I was the only survivor in the Holocaust in concentration camp.
What was your Jewish life like in your community?
And my father was an Orthodox Jew, and we have a pretty good upbringing in Jewish religion. I attended private school, Hebrew school, not Hebrew school, to learn how to pray, and we're supposed to speak at home Yiddish, at least at Sabbath dinner, and it was a pretty happy childhood. I had a lot of friends, and when I was going to school, the public school, I went twice summertime to a camp where I had a wonderful time, and it was supported, I think, by the Jewish community, and they liked sponsored some children who couldn't pay the full fees. But otherwise, I don't know. I myself can say if I felt anti-Semitism in Poland then. I know now that it was, but we lived like in a kind of open ghetto. It was a section of the city that the Jews lived, and it's called Kazimierz. It's very famous because Kazimierz was named after the king of Poland, who was very good to the Jews. Many centuries ago, he gave permission to the Jews to come to Poland and have free open market to do whatever they want. And at that time, they had much more freedom. I know that there was anti-Semitism because the Jewish students could not get to medical schools or to the universities. It was very difficult. And some young men who want to continue their medical education had to go to a different country to get their education. It was almost impossible to get to. Jews had a very limited quota.
What business was your father in?
They were in the textile. The family was in the textile business, and he also, before I remember when I was a young child, and he had like a grocery store. It's like a little department store, but it was a one room probably, and he they had it for many years. And at that time we were prosperous, but something happened, either depression or whatever. But when I came to 18 to remember, we were not rich. What can I tell you? But my mother always used to say, we have to look happy and we have to be clean and wear nice, clean clothes and nice, and nobody has to know how much money is in pocket. So, my mother's family and my father's family originally were very well to do. But as I mentioned, we come from a big family. When you have a lot of kids, it's not too much money extra left.
What businesses were they in?
My brothers.
No, your mother's family and your father's
Oh,
family.
they were in textile, and they were also in the fur business. I had two brothers who were furriers. My older brother married a family member, a second cousin, and her mother had a fur business in Rzeszów. And they married and they moved to a new city in Poland, Bielsko. It's a growing city, and they opened a shop, my brother, and he was prosperous. He didn't have too much money, but he was doing very well. This was shortly before the war. So all of us succeeded, even if we were not rich. All the sisters of mine mothers who said they are fortunate, they are much better off financially, they say, Helen, you the richest of us because you children are the diamonds and they are so wonderful. In fact, they contribute once they start working for themselves. They always used to send money home. My mother and father was fortunate that they had wonderful children and caring children. So I remember there was a lot of love between us, and unfortunate, I lost them all. So, it was cut down.
Did you celebrate Jewish holidays?
Yes, we strictly observed all the holidays, and we have a kosher home and Passover. No matter wherever my brothers and sisters were, they all tried to come home for Passover, and it was a wonderful, wonderful get together. I know we had a small apartment, but that didn't hold back anybody, and I have wonderful memories from that time in my childhood. And still now, I brought up my children that they continue the same. Or I still in Florida, when it comes Passover, even it's not convenient, but I have about 47 people at my Seder table. We continue the tradition. And that's a wonderful way of keeping the family together.
Were there other holidays that you observed?
We observe all the holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Shavuos, and Sukkot. In fact, my oldest son, who's a lawyer, prominent lawyer in Buffalo, he has his own sukkah in his house, and he keeps the tradition, and he keeps the Friday night Sabbath dinner. I'm very proud to come there, and it's a pleasure to be there. When he made the kiddush and the children sing the Smirot.
What type of synagogue was there in Poland?
We have many synagogues. I lived on Moldova. Moldova was a temple. God, I think it was called temple. It was kind of like a reform temple where the high society, the rich Jews who lived in far away from this area, and they came by to the services. My father used to belong to a little synagogue, a shtibel they called it, on Maizelsa Street, and where the Orthodox Jews have different little synagogues, places of worship that they go. I liked to go before my father came Friday night from his synagogue. As a little girl, I used to run to the temple across the street, and I liked to listen to the songs of the choir and the performance of the service. I was fascinated. And this temple is still now in existence. I was there 2 years ago with the March for the Living, and I was the person who talked to the kids and told them about my childhood, how I used to sneak out of the house and came home before my father came from the synagogue, and I used to enjoy. It's a beautiful temple, still Gothic style. The ceiling is so ornate, like this was the style they built at that time. And
Why
but
did you have to sneak?
well, my father being an Orthodox person, he was not very happy that I go to services there. But I had an open mind. I respect my father's wishes. Otherwise, I behave. But I felt it's no harm to learn as a part of the temple. I still feel the same way. I belong here to a conservative temple, and I like to Rabbi Singer from the Reform Temple. I go there sometimes and participate there.
What clubs did you belong to as a child?
Well, there were not too many clubs. There was one a club sponsor. It's called Akiva, and this was like a part of a Hafshara for Israel. And I was very young, and there again, my parents didn't give me permission to belong because the group was mixed, boys and girls, and that was against the Orthodox tradition that they should mix even socially at that young age. And we used to take outing and ski is on what do you call those horse-driven on skis. What do you call it?
Sled?
A sled, yes. And I loved to go there, and I had good memories of it. And so I just gave a different excuse. I'm sorry to say I was otherwise a good person, but I used to like to be with the young people, sing Hebrew songs, and think about Israel, and they prepare the youth at that time how to work there. So when they come to Israel on Aliyah, they know a little how to work on the farm or whatever. But this was the only organization that I recall that was in existence. And anyway, but I had a lot of friends and we did other things, but not organized youth group like they have it here.
What was the first sign of danger?
Well, we were dreaded the war because, first of all, I have two brothers who were in the military, and nobody likes to send their sons to the war. But there was, of course, no choice. My older brother was in the Polish army, and unfortunately, soon after the war, the war with Germany and Poland didn't last long. It was about 2 or 3 weeks, and the war was over. And my brother became a prisoner of war. And when they congregate them in the city of Lublin, where the Polish prisoners of war were there, the Jewish prisoners, as soon as he knew that he was a prisoner of war, he notified his wife, not by phone because the phones were not available at that time to private people. He wrote a card, I am safe, I am in Lublin, in the area of Lublin, and I hope to see you soon. And he sent his love to his wife and the baby, the 1 year old baby. But unfortunately, by the time the news came, he was killed the same day by the Nazis. All the Jewish prisoners were separated and they asked them to run in an open field. And the German riding horses on the horses, they shoot at them like rabbits, they shoot them. And that was the first casualty of war. And when his wife came without the child,
What
it was.
what was it like for you at that time?
It was tragic because my parents, when they found out they lost their oldest son, it was really mourning. The whole family mourning deeply. At that time, we sit all shiver together. And there, I remember again my youngest aunt, Marisha was her name. She used to send the meals and everything to my house because nobody was supposed to do anything during Shiva. So it was concern. There was another episode that's very important to tell. Is that this brother had a twin, and he was living in Tarnum, and he was married and had a child. And when at that time in Tarnum they started wearing the Star of David armbands on their arms. And when he was on his way to Krakow to, I remember, to visit us, or was it a business trip? He didn't think that he did a big crime. He removed his band because he knew in Krakow nobody wore yet. So I say, why stand up? He didn't think he'd be punished for it. And unfortunately, somebody reported him, or there's a German person saw him remove the armband, and he was beaten up so terrible. He was so, you know, he was a strong guy too. He used to serve in the military, and he was very sick after the beating. He had constantly headaches, and when he returned to our house and then to his wife, and his wife said, "This is what they're going to do to the man. You better run away to Russia." A lot of Jews and Polacks too ran away to over the border to Russia to protect themselves. They thought that they won't touch the woman and the children. Little did they know. And at that time, he went rather of our family went over to the other side of the border to be safe. And
What were you doing then?
I was home with my parents, but excuse me, I was home with my parents, and there was only four of us, and we didn't know what to expect really. We of course we already were casualty in my family, and we were worried, but there's not much we can do, and we had no means to go in some place. There were maybe some wealthy people who could afford to run away. Some went to Russia, and they came back because they didn't realize. They thought maybe it's not so bad, and they want to be with the family. They came back, but most of them died later on in concentration.
Were you moved at all?
If I was moved. Oh,
Did you have to move at that time?
Well, there was once an order that all the Jews have to leave Krakow, and Krakow should be Judenrein. They said. At that time, my family decided to go there to city Mielec. It's a small city where we had family. This family left for Russia, so the house was available, was empty. So we decided to go to Mielec, whoever was left. And that was also not such an easy experience. We came to Mielec and we realized there were very few Jews. Most of the Jews were herd into a temple, not the temple synagogue, and they all put on fire. They all died in the place in the synagogue. We find out that there was very little to do for the Jews there, and we stayed there about 2 3 months. There was no employment and there was no future. And then we heard it's not so bad in Krakow. They are so strict that they are not throwing out the Jews yet. So we came back to Krakow. And from Krakow, eventually, after, you know, when, when I think back, we were already had to do forced labors in Krakow, like winter time when we had to shovel the snow or go clean public toilets. They knew by then we wore already the Star of David band on our arm, and we could be easily identified on the street. So just the trucks came and they just picked us up from the street, or they would give a quota and they say, we need tomorrow 200 Jews to come and do some dirty work or whatever. And they had supply. And otherwise, they just pick you up from the street. I remember I worked for a few weeks for a German outfit, a military, and I had to clean the rooms and wash the toilets and do whatever they told me to do. So I had to go every morning. So that was the beginning. And then they, uh, the Jewish businesses were taken over by the German government, whatever, and they put a seal on the door. The owners could not enter their business anymore. One day they got up and it was sealed, and they never could return to the business. Was taken over by Germany. And then the next stage was that we had to move from Krakow and go to a specified place called Podgórze that I mentioned to you. And there they made a ghetto. They surrounded us by walls, and we had some employment there in the ghetto. So in the beginning, we did the brushes. There were a lot of places where people were doing working, making brushes for the German, and they at that time they still paid, so people somehow made a living.
Where did you live?
I lived in Podgórze, Platz Gody. It was like a marketplace, and we were living in terrible conditions. They put a whole family of 10 or whatever in one room, with sharing a kitchen with other families. They congregated in a small area, and eventually hunger came, and it was getting much more difficult. In the beginning, the gates were still open part time, and somehow we could get in some food extra. But it's tourism starvation started, and we tried to live a normal life in the beginning. We had services, we made temporary synagogues, and I remember, no matter what, how bad the condition, somehow you try to survive, and in fact, the children were not going to public school, so there were, makeshift private schools somehow. But it got worse and worse, and eventually they started liquidating the Jews there, and they started making, um, what do you call it? Um, One day they congregate you in the marketplace on the open space, and they were sending away people to different concentration camps. And one day, my brother, my youngest brother, who was 13, he was sent away to Treblinka. We never saw him again. We didn't know about that at that time, where he's going. But then, slowly they started sending people to Auschwitz and all. But the only safest place as long as you're working and employed, you had a better chance of survival. And a makeshift hospital where contagious sickness was rampant, the typhus because of the condition. And my older sister, who had a child, and her husband was sick with typhus. And when the news came that they're going to liquidate the ghetto, they people tried, whoever could walk, tried to get out of the hospital because they had a better chance of survival. Uh, Unfortunately, there were a lot of small children in that hospital. I went to visit because I went to visit my brother-in-law. My sister was there taking care of him. Most of the nurses left and the doctors because they knew if they would stay together, they would be shot with them, and that's a fact. And so I remember going to this hospital and those children asking for water, or they were asking for bedpans, for toilet, needs. And I started helping them out, and I started, how could you refuse? How could you, but, and then I realized if I do that without, for a longer time, I will lose my parents. They were not youngsters, and I had to make them ready to go to the camp because if I had confidence if I be with them, I will somehow hide them and use some tricks to make sure that they are not taken away. And this was a very tragic day. I remember that I had to make the decision, yeah, like everybody else who was in the hospital, who didn't help those people. But I knew I had the family to defend, and I had to make my choice. I have never seen my sister again. And my brother-in-law, I understand, died the next day. But she and her baby went to Auschwitz. She wouldn't part with the child. So that was still in the ghetto that happened. So I lost my brother there, and I lost my sister and her child and her husband. I strive to uh, get my parents ready, make them look young, and so they get in the transport. And I was concerned that they would take them out. If they saw an older person, they pull them out and they sent them directly to Auschwitz. But somehow we got to Plaszow. We were marching from Krakow to Plaszow. This was they were organizing the movement. We are moving to the concentration camp. It is supposed to be a labor camp, but it became really a killing camp. This was the camp that um, Hammond, I forgot his name. Uh, if you see in this picture, Schindler's List, uh, Simon
Yeah.
Get, Simon Get. He was the commander. He was in charge of the Plaszow camp. And we didn't realize, we thought we were going to a labor camp. They say if you work, you'll be safe and you'll survive. Little did we know that this murderer and cruel person was shooting at will at people. And I want you to know that I almost was a casualty of Jaime Get. And I was walking from my barrack where I was working, and I was walking to the latrina. This is the toilet, they called it, were a distance away from my barrack. And I was walking slowly. It was a nice day. I didn't rush. And suddenly I hear that voice of Get. He says, "What? You're going spazieren? You're going on walking casually? You're supposed to be at work." And I see he draws his revolver and pointed at me. And at that time, I had to make a split decision. I knew how easy for him it was to shoot a person, and I started running for my life. And I guess, that saved my life. Otherwise, he would shoot me.
1995, Mary Ferber, Tape 2. Mary, you were telling us how you started to run for your life.
Okay, it was, and now that most of people are familiar with the movie Schindler's List, they probably will understand more about my experience because before people wouldn't even believe that it happened, thing like this. But Amon Get, he was the biggest murderer and cruelest person that could exist, and he was killing people at will. If he didn't like the way you salute or stand or hold your hammer when you're knocking the stones or building something, immediately he had to have his killing done every day, a few people. He was a very good friend of Schindler. And in the beginning, Schindler tried to win his favors, and he drank with him, and he gave him presents and gifts, and he tried to win his um, to try to find out how he can get as many Jews out of his clutch. So this was my personal experience with Get, and if I would not run, I wouldn't be here to tell the story. In fact, I lost a brother-in-law. At that time, I was not yet married, so he was my brother-in-law, but it's a fact that he was killed by Get because he came into the barrack and he didn't like the way uh, he supposed to person was always responsible for the whole barrack. And when the get came to check on something, somebody had to make a report how many people are there, and they had to stay at how you call it, like the soldiers stay at attention. And he didn't like the way he made the report, and he shot him at this moment. And in fact, his father, who was my father-in-law, was there and his presence, and nobody could do anything. He just did it in a quick way, and they have no chance.
What was your job in the ghetto?
I was working in warehouses that we are collecting the clothes left behind by the Jews who were living in the ghetto. Eventually, they closing, liquidating the ghetto. So the German opened warehouses in Plaszow, and there were different departments like textile or linen and carpeting and all kinds. I was in charge of the notion, like thread, and they were liquidating stores like this, and we were kind of charged. And whenever the Germans need something, we had to furnish them. It wasn't a difficult job, you know. I was there working, wasn't working very hard. The thing is that soon after they liquidate those warehouses, and I was sent out to a station outside of Krakow, outside Plaszow. It's similar like Schindler's List, except Schindler protected his Jews, and we were working for the Wehrmacht, not the SS. It was a very hard work that we did, and but the conditions were a little better than the flat shop. It was cleaner, and we had a little more food. We worked very hard, but as long as we were not starving, we did not mind. But eventually, this was liquidated too because the front was coming closer, and they tried to send the Jews farther away from front. The Russian front was coming closer. So uh, we were sent by we evidently did a good job. Uh, most of the women, we had some men, and the German outfit decided they want to transfer us to Germany. The labor was cheap, it was free. We didn't get paid, so why not, you know? So we were, when this camp was liquidated, they sent us back to Plaszow. It was still in existence. And then at that time already the Plaszow had changed. They were hanging people. They were sending out transport after transport to Auschwitz. But we were a specified group of women that we supposed to work for the same outfit, and they supposed to send us to Germany. as with Schindler's List, instead of to Germany, they sent us to Auschwitz. We were, we were 100 women. There were some older people also with us. They sent us to Auschwitz, and we did not know what they're going to do with us in Auschwitz, why they sent us to Auschwitz. Of course, we were very worried, we were scared that we'll go probably straight to the beds and we will come out to the chimney, as they say. And a whole night we were sitting in dark in a room close. This was in Birkenau. You know, I was not so familiar. Auschwitz. Auschwitz were the buildings, where the brick buildings where people lived. We were sent to Birkenau, where the ovens were, and the guest the people. So we had a horrible night, not knowing what's going to happen to us. And anyway, in the morning we were still alive, and they sent us eventually to the barracks. I by now most of people know the horrible condition in Auschwitz, so I won't go into that. It was just the feeling that they treat us like cattle, you know, a simple function that we don't appreciate in our everyday life is using toilet paper or newspaper when you need to go to the toilet. We had nothing. Can you imagine if they take you in groups to those open holes and you have no way to keep yourself clean? So we had some old blankets with cotton in it, old, filthy. So I used to take out the pieces of cotton from that blanket, and this was our cover for the night. Each time when we had to go to the toilet, and that's how we keep ourselves clean. And the conditions were, of course, horrible. Emotionally, it was just, you know, I thought if I stay a little longer, I go out of my mind. It's not that I was starving. I wasn't long enough in Auschwitz to be so hungry. But you know, we saw those heaps of bodies laying and people dying and walking around days and the smell of the burning bodies and nobody cared. Nobody paid attention, and the future was so unsure. We didn't know we're supposed to go to work to Germany, and here we wind up in Auschwitz in this horrible, horrible place where your stench was so terrible, and I till now I smell of Clorox, makes me sick. I wouldn't go to a swimming pool in an enclosure because the smell is there, the Clorox. They keep spilling the Clorox all over because they were afraid of an epidemic. That it was, you know, I just say, oh, I'll never get out alive from this place, from this hell. But well, what can I say? First of all, I remember coming out from the showers and they took away our clothes and everything, and then when we come out, they gave us they throw us a dress or shoes. If it fits or don't fit, you have to take. You have no choice. You have no underwear under it. You know. I remember it must have been late fall. It was still hot outside, and I had a very warm, heavy dress. It was so hot, and I removed the sleeve, like I tie it in front of my chest to get a little air in my body. And I had high heels. Can you imagine? I'm tall, a tall person. I was skinny, and and you know I had those high heels. I have to tell you about a very interesting incident. I had my aunt Marisha that I told you, Diana, that she was a wonderful person and she helped us many times in life. And she was on the other side of my area. Electric wire was separating us, the field, but we could talk to each other over the field, you know. And I told her that I'm so, you know, here I am a young girl who had never a luxury in my life, and I was so depressed and I was so down. And my aunt, who was really a princess of a person and come from a very well-to-do home, and she tried to counsel me and say, don't give up, don't despair, this will get better. And she went and threw me shoes, wooden shoes, so I couldn't walk with the high heels. She threw over the wire so I can she wanted to help me. And then I think she made me from piece of cotton. Uh, she had evidently needs to get into sewing equipment. She made me a bra from little schmatters. So, and this was the last time I saw her. After, I loved her because she was a wonderful person. And then one day, it was about 2 weeks or 3 weeks that we were in Auschwitz. They called us. We were 80 women. We were 100, but 20, I say, they took away from our group because there were 12. They left, and they probably put them into the ovens. And we went to uh, showers again. And we didn't know. They shaved us everywhere, the body and our hair. They took everything away again, and we didn't know exactly. They didn't tell us that they're getting ready to go out of Auschwitz to our place where we're supposed to go to work. And here we heard through the wire. I don't know. Somehow the news were coming along. That they are going to add 20 women to our group because it's supposed to be a group of 100. And of all the people, I come out the shower, shaven. My hair was all white because my hair covered my hair. My face was so sunken because we worked outside, so we had color. And suddenly that white head shaven, we looked awful. And whom did we meet? 20 women from Krakow that I knew from the ghetto. There were 4 sisters with them, and there was Erna Rubinstein and her sisters, and with all the tragedy surrounding us, and, and, and we didn't know what our future was going to bring. They had to start laughing when we came out with the shaven head. Looked so funny. They had their head shaven 2 weeks before or so they had a little, color on her leg, on her head. So Erna Rubinstein came, and her sisters and other 16 people, and they joined our group. And it just happened that I eventually married Erna Rubinstein's uncle, whom I met in Germany, and eventually I became her, and we kept in touch. And, there's the whole story in the future.
We will talk about that later. I think you'd like to introduce
Anna just came in because she lives in Boca Raton, and we keep very close, and I love her, and she's my mentor. She's always was an example for me, and I asked her to come and say hello because I have to bring quickly. So I know Erna has an appointment and she cannot spend too much time with us, but I want you to know that at future, when I continue with my story, at the end, we wind up together at the death march. And when I gave up and I couldn't walk anymore because I didn't have the strength, and I secretly climbed on a wagon where they were a horse and buggy, where they're carrying the dead people or almost dead. I climbed on that wagon because I could not walk, and I lost my will to live. And it was just a few days before the end of the war. And when they realized I was on the wagon, they ran over to the Erna and her sisters and dragged me down from the wagon and supported me under their arms. I have a couple pots and pans that was my life depend on it to get my little water and soup. They carried this for me, and they schlepped me down from the wagon and said, "Oh no, you're not going to give up, not now. We're going to survive, and you better start marching with us." I just want to add to it because I know she has to leave. That that night when we were sleeping in a barn, it was early May. Oh, was the end of April? Oh no, this was April, and it was very cold. And we decided that's it. We're not going to continue on our march. We hid under a double floor, and that saves me. Eventually, saved my life by them pulling me off the wagon. And it was my pleasure to call on Erna. And come on, Erna, please come say a few words. Anush, thank you for coming. You're always there when I need you. She was always there. There's much I wish we had more time to talk about, but I know time is limited. But I appreciate if she would say a few words.
I'd be very happy to because it's really an unbelievable story, and yet this is one of the positive sides of it. Mary has mentioned when she came to Auschwitz, and we were already in Auschwitz, and we were selected by some unbelievable miracles, the four of us in the group of 20. And we come to the showers where they were, and we see this group of women with long hair, with clothes on, with packages in their hands, and we saw, oh my God, and we were already completely shaven, and we had nothing. We had a uniform, blue and white uniform, and wooden shoes. And we look at them and say, oh my God, we're going to go to work someplace together with them. How will they treat us? They will treat us like animals. And all of a sudden, they take this whole group of 8 women into the showers, and they come out completely shaven, and we looked much better because we already had a few hair on our heads. But they put us all together, and we went by train into the midst of Germany. And I'm sure Mary will be able to tell you about it, but it's unbelievable camp. But this is not really a concentration camp. They built 2 barracks in which they put 100 women at first. We were the 100 women. This is already November, and it's very cold. And there is nothing on the floor. It's just ground. And we were lucky when it snowed because we could wash with the snow, or we could drink the snow because we hardly had any water. It's extremely difficult, but the worst part of it was that here we were, 100 women in barracks with just a few guards watching us in a village, normal human beings. There was not a concentration camp. There were no electric wires around us. And everybody could see we did the most horrendous work. We had to carry, 2 of us had to carry a telephone pole day in and day out. And I always tell my students when they go outside to look at a telephone pole, and if you can imagine the 2 people who had nothing to eat, who had no clothes on, and this kind of tremendous starvation in these conditions, could carry a telephone pole, I just can't imagine, because today I really can't. I was the oldest one, and I always worked with my youngest sister because I thought I could help her. And if somebody broke down, somebody bent down, or couldn't carry anymore, they would just come and shoot them. And the villagers never came with a piece of bread or help us, or if they picked somebody who was almost dead, they would bring it to the guards, and the guards would shoot them to death. It was just an unbelievable situation. What worried me mostly, and what really got me, was it was Christmas time, and on Sunday too, when I heard the church bells ring, and people were going to church and praying to God, and I thought, my God, how in the world can they pray to God when they see these young women being shot, being killed? It's an unbelievable situation. And then we from this camp, we were taken out after 3 months. In March, we left this camp. 20 of us survived. There were 4 of my sisters and I, and Mary was among them. And then in the meantime, they brought 100 men from Hungary, and Hungary came to war later. And these men couldn't take the starvation, they couldn't take the cold, they couldn't take there was no men left. They all died before we even knew it. And then we were on the death march with Mary, and as she already told you, at one point she couldn't walk anymore, and she was taken on a wagon. And on the wagon were mostly dead people, but some of them half dead, not quite dead. And when I looked at the wagon, I saw Mary, and I knew her from the camp because I didn't know many other people. There were thousands of us, and I saw that she's still breathing. And I thought, we must take her off. We pulled her off. She couldn't walk anymore. We just pulled her off, risking our own lives, because if they would have caught us, we would definitely be shot. I would be shot, she would be shot, we would all be shot, because you couldn't do such a thing. And we helped her walk, and then when we hid overnight, that night we hid in the forest under the barn. We had a little tiny hole, and the 5 of us squeezed in. And when they were looking in the morning for people, trying to find people who were hiding, they couldn't even imagine that anybody could have crawled into it because it was such a small hole. And then eventually in the evening, we walked out together with Mary, the 5 of us, and we could hardly walk. We were lucky we got some food from somebody on the way, and we rolled down the hills, and we ended up in a small town in Czechoslovakia. And this
Right.
woman,
But we'll have to, we cannot skip the lady there who was so kind to us before we went to Czechoslovakia.
yes,
The German lady who gave us, I remember this as the most beautiful experience I ever had. That we went to the German house, and this woman say, "I'm poor. I don't have too much. My husband is at war, and my son is in Hitler Jugend. I have enough potatoes, and I have enough. I can give you a piece of bread, and she let us warm hot water so we can bathe and give us straw on the floor and to sleep. And I remember we pinch each other. It's not true that we are in a warm place and we are not hungry and we don't have to march. And, so even the reaction to that food was not so good. At night we were running the whole night to the out, outhouse where we had diarrhea because our stomachs were not used to all that food. It's potatoes and milk, enough milk. And so, but it was still the most wonderful uh, experience, in a long time.
we were very, very fortunate, and we were really fortunate indeed that we have survived it, and it still is a very long way to freedom. But as Mary said, eventually we ended up. I was working with the American Occupation Forces because I spoke English, and then I got a job with the United Nations, and we all were together all the time. And then my father's youngest brother came looking for the family and ended up in our town because they had in Germany they had lists of survivors and so on. So he looked for us and he found us and he stayed with us, and the two of them fell in love and got married. So now she became my aunt, and ever since then. But we really like sisters. We have a very close relationship all through our lives, and our children too. So
Well, thank you very much.
Her children come to my
My
saying,
pleasure.
yeah, Ernie, thank you.
Her kids.
Okay, we were interrupted by Erna's visit on mine, asking her to come and just say we are very close and we went through a lot and we still keep very close. We feel we are family, and I'm grateful to her for being there when I needed her. I'm talking about that Auschwitz that we met the 20 group, the four sisters of Ferber, and there were other people, and we were on a train. They put us on a train, a wagon, those famous train, a wagon without water, without toilet facilities again. I just realized that I didn't mention that we went by those same train wagons to Auschwitz under horrible conditions. And down toilet, there was a pail in the corner where you need to, you do your function. You can imagine there were 100 women in a wagon and you have to use it as a toilet too. So it's unbelievable how much you can take it. But going to Germany again, the same situation, again in the wagons, and we were traveling for days, which I cannot remember exactly now anymore how long we were on those wagons, but I know that the conditions were awful and we were hungry most of the time and not enough water. When we arrived to this barracks, as Erna mentioned, they built two barracks. It wasn't a regular concentration camp; it was a working camp, and the conditions were really awful. It was freezing. It was cold, and we got some clothes from a camp nearby Flossenberg. It's a German camp, and we got the striped uniforms there. They said that was a men's camp, and didn't matter, we wore it. And then the Hauptmann, I forgot his name, but his rank was Wehrmacht, it wasn't SS. And he got for us some winter clothes from a different camp. I remember I was lucky I got a winter coat with a full color, and that helped me later in the death march. This was my pillow, the full color, give me comfort. But we were working there very hard, also outside doing the same labor that it was even too difficult for men to do. As Anna mentioned, Hungarian Jews, I know there were Greek Jews who came, they were sent to us to do that hard labor. They were dying like flies because they were not exposed to the cold weather. You see, we went through slowly from ghetto to Flashu, from Flashu to Auschwitz, and slowly we're acclimatized. And also, we are used to the cold winters. Poland had cold winters. In Greek, they didn't have that very cold weather. So their legs swelled and their shoes didn't fit, and they were immediately sent to an extermination camp nearby, wherever it was. If it was Flossenberg, probably Flossenberg, and they couldn't last 2 weeks in that conditions. And we stayed there for quite some time. A lot of people were in poor conditions. They sent them to Ravensbrück. I remember at one time they sent 20 women from that labor camp to Ravensbrück, and we know that all of them died. And Ravensbrück was the exterminating camp. Very, very few people survived it. And we were sent from that camp, and I made it fast, but I remember the details. We were sent to a camp that it was in Sudetengau. Spodau was the name. Boy, I'm remembering, I am amazed at myself. And there was a factory there where we worked at precision work for an airplane factory. And the work was very clean. It was we did precision work with screws and little part of the plane, and then we got some food, but oh yeah, the camp was a small camp, and most of the inmates they were professional crime people. They were German people who were political or they did some kind of crime. They were prostitutes and lesbians and all. I mean, people who Hitler decides they are not worth of having live in a free society. And we were not familiar at that time. We were innocent young kids who grew up in camp. We didn't know that there is such thing as lesbians. And I'm not going to go into details, but we were seeing things that we couldn't imagine. Two women sleeping together, and they made love. But we came 20 women at that time. We were 20 left from the 100, and we came there, and suddenly we hear that order wasn't officially that they are digging a grave for the Jewish prisoners, and they're going to get rid of. There's not enough of them. They didn't know what to do with us, and we were supposed to be shot that night, and the grave was ready for us. Those lesbians and those German, what do you call it, prisoners, whatever. I don't want to call names because they were human beings, but they were good people. They felt sorry for us, and they said, "Why are you here? What did you do?" They didn't even understand that we are imprisoned just because we are Jewish. We didn't do anything wrong, and they couldn't understand. But when they heard that they were going to be shot that night, they start praying for us. And I don't know if their prayer helped, whatever helped, that they kept us alive through the morning. In the morning, they found out that that was a death, we called it death march. This was the march at the end of the war, that when they didn't know what to do with us. They were marching us from one part to the other away from the front until the front came from all sides. They came from American and the Russian coming, the English were coming. So they were congregating all those people from different camps, and they sent them on a march. We called it death march because there was no purpose for it. It was cold, it was freezing. They didn't know what to do with us. Maybe they didn't want to kill us, that they were afraid already about their own safety. They knew that they lost the war by then. and they were thinking more about their own skin, what will happen to us or what to do with us. Maybe even the orders didn't come, from the high ups to tell what to do. It was confusion. Well, I have to bring up one fact when we were walking in the desert.
January 26th, 1995. Mary Ferber, tape 3. Mary, you were telling us about the march.
Okay, we were lucky that night, that next morning, that group was going by, and there was a kind SS woman. There were SS women supervising camp, and how we say it's bescheuert. Somebody was thinking about us, and she gave the order that they should send us out of this camp and we should join that march. Well, we had no option. We know we're going. We don't go to heaven. We're not going to good times. But at least our life was still there, and we didn't die that night as we thought we will. And when we joined that march, it was called Death March, but every day people were dying there from starvation, from the cold, from the exposure for all those years of suffering. The body can take so much. And so every night there was a wagon following with dead people, almost dead, and they finished them at night. But we were still alive. There were still the four sisters and me. We were always in one column, and we were supporting each other. At one time, we were walking. It was a very famous city in Czechoslovakia where rich people used to go and get the mineral waters, and we walk in the middle of the city, and there was kind of a lot of confusion. I have to tell you what the thinking of. We were so starving that at this point we didn't even realize that we had the opportunity to sneak out, maybe with mixing in with the people from the city, maybe run away and be safe. But the hunger was so great, and people were throwing at us some piece of bread or whatever they had, sugar, in a bag. And I remember a woman next to me got a sugar bag, and there was a leak in the sugar bag. And I put my hand so instead of falling to the ground, and this was like a lifesaver. And we had all be able to lick at the sugar. I know, people were very possessive. She wasn't happy that I got the sugar, but it was the way. But when people are hungry, they are not always kind or thoughtful. The hunger makes you sometimes into an animal. They have men camp, with all due respect to people. But some people become animals when it comes to food. In fact, also on the march, if you have a piece of bread that was left, nobody could say. But if you have a piece, you try to divide it into two meals. So I remember one night I had the bread under my head, and somebody stole it in the middle of the night when I was asleep, and that was terrible, terrible loss. But as I say, people react differently to hunger. But that day in Carlsbad, now it came to me, it's a very famous city in Czechoslovakia where rich people went for their mineral beds. beds. And we didn't even take the opportunity to run away. But the next day we were walking again, and I was at my end. I could not anymore walk, and we used to get so little food, just a spoonful of watery soup, and maybe if we're lucky, get a piece of bread. And our strength was giving up, and I say, no more. I don't want to fight it anymore. That's when I decided to go that way. And Erna and her sisters saved my life by pulling me down. And that night, we slept in a barn. And like Anna said, there was a double floor. And we slide in. We told our friends, we're going to stay there because we had no choice. I could not walk, and her sister, one of the sisters, was very depressed, and they felt that she will lose her mind if she continued. We we hide under the floor. We were lucky we were not discovered by the soldiers who had their guns and rifles with them. And they even put the rifle under the floor to check, but they didn't reach deep enough, and we were lucky and stayed behind. So that was the day. I mean, that we almost were free. We were hungry, and we were there at night when it's at dusk. We decided to go out. We had to do our bodily function, and we had to get out. And this was still Germany. There was a small village in Germany. There were single homes. The war by then was known that it was ending, and the Germans lost the war, and we knocked it. And here we were five of us. We were wearing those striped uniforms, and you cannot hide that you are a prisoner in a camp. So we knocked at a couple doors, and they didn't respond. They say they have no room or they have no food. They wouldn't even listen to us until we came to a little house, and a kind German woman let us in, and she said, "I don't have too much food. I have potatoes and I have milk. I have a cow, so she has enough milk, and I can spare a piece of bread for each of you." And she let us in. And I tell you, this was a dream beyond dream to be in a warm place. We had enough food in our stomach, and she even let us warm some water for us so we can wash a little for probably a year or so. We were filthy and we were full of lice, and I assume we were smelly. We didn't even know the difference. We didn't have no really underwear or change of clothes, nothing. But it was still a dream, and we know it's the beginning of freedom. And I actually pinched my friend, that my niece, who unfortunately has Alzheimer now. She was the sweetest person. I think, Giza, is that true? We are not hungry, and we are in a war place, and nobody stands with us over with a gun, and we couldn't believe it. And as I mentioned, the consequences of so many food. First, I have my food stomach; it wasn't so good, and I want you to know that a lot of people died soon after the war was over because they overate, and our stomachs were so shrunken that the stomach wasn't used to have a full amount of food, and we had diarrhea, and we're running the whole night to the outdoor house, but it was worth it. Believe me, it was worth it. And we were there about a couple of days. She was very kind to us. I want you to know that when we came to another city, when we had enough clothes and food, we went back to her and we thanked her. We brought a gift for being so kind. When she was German, it was very seldom. It was very small percentage, but she was nice and she helped us when we needed the help. After a couple of days, she told us that she prepared a white sheet to surrender when the American comes, and she realized they lost the war. And as I mentioned, her husband was in the army on the Russian front, and her son was in the Hitler Jugend. And maybe she was a Nazi, but she realized that she has no choice, and the war is over. And so she was kind-hearted to us. Soon after we left, after she was afraid that the neighbors wanted to act good to her, that she helped the prisoner of war, she we walked over Czechoslovakian border, and we came to Volare. It's a very small village, and there the Czech people opened their arms to us, and they were very kind, and they welcomed us. they even slaughter a pig, something, to feed us. At that time, we didn't care if it was a dog or anything. We were hungry and just so we had food. And when we find out, excuse me, I need a tissue. How the other family, like my aunts, how they die, how my sister, how my brother, no, you know, the one who died as a prisoner of war, and my little brother. Are you printing? No. Okay, let's go back to the Czechoslovakia. As we crossed the border to Czechoslovakia, we were greeted. The place where we came is I just find out. I forgot it before. It's Volare. It's a very small village, and the Czech people were very nice to us. They didn't ask if we're Jewish or not Jewish. They know that we come from concentration camps, and they were very hospitable. And and we were staying there about a couple of days there, 2 or 3 days, and then we hear the news that the Americans are here in prison. It's the biggest little small city in Czechoslovakia, and they didn't even bother to come to Volare because it was such a small village. It was not important to liberate officially, but Erna, my niece now, my friend at that time, she spoke English, and she took one of the children from the Czech kind, our host who gave us a room to stay in their house, and I think they walked to that city. I think it was Pilsen. I don't know how many miles it was. It wasn't that much, probably, maybe 10 miles or so. And they went to the city, and I came back with three handsome American soldiers, and they said that we are the first survivors they met. And they embraced us, and they were wonderful. They came back eventually and brought us food and clothing so we can change. And it was the most beautiful time of my life. At that time, it was spring. It was May 8th. The weather was beautiful, and the birds were singing, and we were free. And we don't have to starve, and we don't have to march, and we don't have to see all the horrors. And we are alive, and whole life was in front of us. And we spent the one night more in that very, very small village. They came and brought us valises of clothes and food, and we distribute to the kind people in Czechoslovakia who were so nice to us, and we share most of the stuff. We each had a set of clothes and underwear, and we were not worry about for the future because we know we survived without anything so long, so we knew that we have it. And the American came, they found out about us. There was a chaplain Lippman, Eugene Lippman, who was the chaplain in the army, and he became our protector. There was a I forgot his first name. His name was Levy. He was a captain or even a general in this outfit, the army outfit, and he became our protector. And we met Major Ross from the army, and he was wonderful. They kind of really took care of us and made sure that no harm would come to us. And I know that we started attending the services Friday night with Rabbi Lippman, Eugene Lippman, and he was a wonderful person, Rabbi Lippman. He helped the survivors all over, wherever this was his function. He followed us through our lives till the end. He attended our weddings and our funerals. Unfortunately, we have a couple, and he was always in touch with us.
Where did you go next?
From we were in from Volare, we went to Prachatice. It's another Czech Czech city, a small city, and the American people, our friends in the army, made sure we got a very nice apartment. And there were two more of us. So we were now four sisters, Ferber and I was. Then we found another friend. Her name was Dora Appel. And then was another one. She lives in Australia. Dora Appel lives in New York. And she has a big family. She was very Orthodox. She married a very Orthodox Jew. And they have a lot of grandchildren. And
So there were
children.
7 of you?
But we were 7. There was a young boy who comes from London, England, and he was a survivor of Auschwitz. And somehow we took in anybody who was alone at that time, and we kind of lived together, and we were protected by the American friends, you know. And Helmut was his name from England, and he eventually found his mother in London. He, we don't know, we lost contact with him. And one of our friends was Bronca, I forgot the last name. She anyway married and she has children, grandchildren. She lives in Melbourne, Australia. And we moved from there, we moved to Germany. We had to cross the Czechoslovakia border. And in Germany, there was an outfit called UNRWA, United Nations Relief Fund, I think, that took care of the survivors from the Holocaust. And they made sure we have enough food and clothes. And then eventually, Erna started working for this outfit, and she was the interpreter with contact between the Holocaust survivors and the American army.
Where did you live?
We went to Tischenreuth, this is Oberbayern in Germany. We got an apartment was assigned to us. There was a Jewish center there. They organized. There were few German Jews who came back, not too many, but most of the people who lived in Stuttgart, not Stuttgart, this was Tischenreuth, were survivors from Holocaust. There were also quite a few different nationalities there, and they were not Jewish, but they also needed assistance, and we were there. And the Jewish Community Center made us, we become a big family. We're still in touch with those people who are all over America, you know, and most of them succeed very well. We're all very fortunate that after surviving all the horrors and unbelievable conditions that we came out stable, that we are still willing to live and enjoy life the way it is. We never forgot our past, but we always appreciate our good fortune of coming to America.
How did you live at that time?
Oh, from Tischenreuth, at that time, Erna started working for UNRWA, and she made a living there, and her sister worked there too. I met in Tischenreuth Erna's uncle Chaim, and we fell in love. He was very handsome. He was 11 years older than I, but age is no barrier if you fell in love. And believe me, he had no security or financial means to really attract me too, because he also was a survivor and he had nothing. But there was love between us, and I did not worry about how we make our future. I can assure you, even he was not rich, we were never hungry, and I was always close, and he was eventually a good provider. He was a furrier, and he worked as a furrier in
Did you get married?
I got married in Tischenreuth. Before eventually we went to Stuttgart. Because in Stuttgart there was a big concentration of survivors. Most of the Jews in Tischenreuth left because we were surrounded by Germans who were not our friends. You know, even I want you to know, when I became pregnant and I lived in Stuttgart, I want to rent a place from a German woman. We sub-rented a room. And she was not very friendly. She said she knew that I expecting a baby. She didn't want a small child, and I can understand. But we paid them enough money, and she agreed, you know. But later on, when she got to know us, she was very good to us. She made sure that her son, who had a crib and other things for baby, she brought it to our room. We had one room. We all lived in one room, and we had the kitchen facilities too, where we could cook. And we shared with her the kitchen. I know she was a Nazi when we came there, but she got to know us, and she liked me so much, and she loved my baby. She did everything for him. She played with him. She took me shopping, and she became a different person. And her son came and helped us, so we become good friends. You know, I never asked her about the past, but when I needed her, she was there for me after the war. Maybe she was guilty that we went through suffer so much, and she wanted to make up a little.
Was there other
Mrs. Strahler, I after the war, they were all so guilty. They knew what happened. Even they say we didn't know anything happened. We didn't know. You know, I went to drugstore and they say, Frau Ferber, when you go to America, please tell them that not all the Germans are bad and so on. And I say, look, I went through the horror and I found two people who were good. There were thousands episodes of my life. Nobody helped and nobody did anything. So please don't tell me what to my opinion on German. You know, I can tell you that I was in concentration camp, and with all the hundreds and hundreds of Germans that we met and how there was one guy who sometimes hid a piece of bread, and when he had a chance, one guy who was good in carrying, you know, who couldn't take the, you know, the treatment. So, you know, what can I say? The percentage was minimal, you know, one person in thousands who was kind. But I never forget Mrs. Strahler, she was good to us. I rewarded every time we cooked dinner or whatever, she was part of it. We served to her too. So we came to from Tushenroyd. We had the weddings. There were quite a few weddings because everybody was alone and nobody wants to be. They want to have their families. So
What was the wedding like?
it was a very nice wedding. I remember my husband, and he didn't have any money, believe me. But then he started working as superior, the model fur coat. It was for maybe even for Jewish people or whatever. So we had a little money, and he went to the farm, on the farm outside the city. He bought goats and bought fish, carp. This was our very favorite food. You know, they come from lakes, and not here. They in America, I know they most of the people don't like to think that the carp is a good fish. So he bought everything, and my sister-in-law, his sister, cooked. And they made a very beautiful wedding, and we had really a good time. And most of the weddings somehow, you know, were nice and plenty of food. But we realized that that's not the place where to settle down. Tirschenreuth was still the overwhelmed. They they were not our friends, and we felt that there's no future for us to be there.
Did you feel anti-Semitism?
Officially, they didn't show it, but we know we cannot trust them, and we did not want to live with them. We went through the horrors. We can never accept them as our neighbor. So most of the people left Tirschenreuth. We came to Stuttgart. The reason we came is because our plan was to um, go to America or Israel, and we knew we had to get out of the station. It was a very small community. In Stuttgart was a place where you can get to the boat. I mean, it was a big city, and there was a council, German council, no German, American council, and was a big congregation of survivors, and there was things happening. And we eventually, my son was born. He was 2 years when we left Germany, and we came. Andra helped us with papers. And we came as displaced person to America. We had some friends. Oh, my husband's sister came before us. She came in September. We came in December. So she kind of made arrangement that we go to Tishnroyd. Our papers came to New York. I was not sure that this is the right decision to make it for us without asking, because my husband being a furrier, for him was the best place where the center was in New York City. But as it is, our papers were transferred to Bingham, no Bingham, yeah, Binghamton, New York. Right. It was a small community, but a very nice community. And immediately we were accepted with open arms. My husband, it took him about, I would say, we came in December, he started working in May as a furrier. He was a very kind guy, a person who owned a big department store, Mr. Resnick. And he says to him, Jack, you wait for me. I'm going to Florida. It's December. And he spent 3 months in Florida. And he said, when I come back, you will start working for me. I promise you. Don't worry. So it was so. The Jewish community was very nice to us in Binghamton. They found us an apartment. And I think we got $35 every week. Financial assistance. We had not money, and my husband didn't find work yet. And I can only have praise for the acceptance of the American people. I know some people say, "Oh, nobody helped us. We came to America. We started working immediately, and we had nobody helped us." I cannot say we had wonderful people we met, and they all were caring for us, and they made sure that we don't lack of anything.
Did you tell your story to any of the Americans when you came over
Uh, my story, you mean
about the Holocaust?
I made a tape here in Miami.
I mean, at that time when you first came
Oh,
over.
when I came? No, not really. I was, well, if I was asked, we had an assistant. As I told you, my father-in-law, my husband was once interviewed in the Jewish Center immediately after they come. When I read this article now, my husband didn't know a word in English. My father-in-law didn't know a word in English, and I think his sister maybe was there. So when I read that story, it's not accurate. They didn't know what they write. They say they come from a tiny village of Krakow. Krakow has 350,000 people, and they wrote, they asked some question in Yiddish, but they wrote in English. I don't know how it counted that there was such poor communication, because my husband spoke Yiddish and my father-in-law and this director in the center knew. But it was not accurate, but it's difficult. You don't understand. Yeah.
Did you have to learn English? How did that?
I took courses in Germany from a Polish professor in English, so I had a little knowledge. See, I was not, when they were interviewed, I would have understand what they saying. But I had a small child, baby, so I was there. I didn't know they were going to be interviewed. But my husband didn't know one word in English, and so my father. So now my husband went to night school, and most of the survivors, and they learn English. I never attended school because I had one child, and then eventually later in America, I had another son, and I was busy with the children, and so I didn't have time to go at night. I don't know, for some reason. I learned it from the television and from just listening to it.
Were there many survivors in Binghamton?
No, not at all. There were 2 or 3 other families. That's all. But we become active in the synagogue where we joined, and we met a lot of wonderful American friends, and we were very close with American people. And that maybe was the reason that I had to speak English with them. That made me learn first the language. Uh, then the children were growing up, and I want them to learn. I never spoke to them in Polish because I felt, they have to learn the language of the country. And they knew a little Yiddish. I speak Yiddish quite well. But we were wonderful friends, and we become active. And my husband became president of the synagogue. He served for 11 years, and I was president of the sisterhood. I was always serving on the board. I was working for United Jewish Appeal. I was working for different organizations. I was collecting money for the Heart Fund and for all. I was so grateful to be here, and I want to give of myself in return. When the Russian Jews came here much later, and we were going to Florida, it was my privilege and my pleasure to help them. Like I got help when I came here, and we were supplied with clothes. And okay, uh, do you want me to talk more?
Ferber, tape 4. Mary, you were telling us, you finished your story and you had told me previously about your large family. Is there something you would like to tell us about them?
Now that I think back, and I know how important it is to tell about my family, and I know so many that it's sometimes difficult to follow at the time when I'm talking. I just realized that I left out a very important, horrible loss in my family. First of all, my mother, who was sent from classroom. One day I came from work and I found out that my mother and my two sisters were incarnated in a separate field, and they were sent away. It was no way I could speak to them or see them or I want to join them because we were very close and I didn't want to stay apart if I had a choice, but I had no choice. They wouldn't let me join. And then I found out that my mother and my sister were sent to a camp Skarżysko in Poland. It was a factory of chemicals where people worked it wasn't good for your health. I know there were quite a few inmates in this camp. I only know after the war I found out that my mother, this was shortly before the end war, was taken to be shot just because she was around 60, I imagine. I understand she didn't look so old, and she was in pretty good shape, but they did not decide she wasn't young enough to live, and they took away. And my two sisters, one was younger than me, so she must have been about 14 or so at that time. And my older sister, who must have been maybe close to 20 or 18, between 18 and 20, would not separate with my mother. Even the Nazi soldiers pushed away my sister. You don't have to go, you stay behind. And they would not let go of mother, and they all three were shot with a group of other people. And that was a horrible news for me. And I found in Yad Vashem in Israel a book where it was written that the two young Wolfgang sisters died with the mother because they would not separate from her. So that's a very important part of my life that the history should know about it, and I'm telling it, even if it's very painful. But I have the responsibility for them to tell, because they cannot talk for themselves. Then I forgot to talk about one of my sister and brother, Ozias Fortgang and Sabina, who were in the area of Tarnopol. They also ran over the border to be safe from the Nazis. And the last news I have from them was my sister who eventually died in Israel. She told me Sabina in Kiev wanted to join them on the train to Siberia, but they discouraged them and said, "Look, you are here in Tarnopol. You don't have to go. We are on the training. We have to because they won't let them go. Stay behind. You know how hard life is in Siberia." And unfortunately, I found out later. I never heard about. Nobody heard from them. So I assumed that they died in Tarnopol. And I found a piece of information someplace in my documents where it states that in 1943 or so there was a pogrom in Tarnopol and where 1,000 Jews were shot. So I assume that they died there. They were beautiful, handsome couple, you know, they're sister and brother, and I never heard from them. So that's not a part of my family that I would like to mention. I also would like to talk about my dear aunt Marisha, who was a wonderful sister to my mother. She um, died in Stutthof with the only child. They would take them out on a boat, as I heard from eyewitnesses. And there also other two cousins of mine died at that incident. I understand that they took them out on a boat in Stutthof, and the people were drowned in that boat. There were, I understand, some witnesses to it. I don't know the details exactly, but that was a fact. Then I had an aunt in Lublin, my mother's sister, and they're very well off. They had a factory of nails. They were quite prosperous. There was three children and my aunt and her husband, and we never heard from them. And we know that there was close to Treblinka and Majdanek was the camps where they exterminated. And I can't believe it. When I was in Poland, I was 1992. I was a volunteer on the March for the Living. And the reason I went on that march is first to be there for the children who were going to see the horrors and see the fact what happened to their um, ancestors. You know, I felt I want to be with them, and also for my personal reason, I want to go there and stand and flash over my father died. That's another fact that I forgot to mention. I want to say, Hineni, I'm here. I didn't forget you. You're always with me, and it made me feel good that I went. Like you go to a cemetery, you go even if it's painful, or you say Kaddish. That was my reason to go. So when I was in Lublin and I was in Majdanek, I couldn't believe it. It was just almost in the middle of the city of Lublin, and the Polacks they must have seen it. They must have because the houses all around, and nobody did anything. And there people were dying in the crematoria, and there were thousands of people dying. So it's unbelievable. Uh, another fact I forgot. It was also on the Mark of the Living. It has to be told. It is a fact that after the war, the Polish people killed a lot of Jews in Kielce. There was a untrue uh, story. I mean, it was a Polish woman said that the Jews came and kidnapped her child, and they were going to use the blood of the child for Passover matzah. Can you imagine in this day and age and to make such a what do you call it? It's an untrue thing, of course. They did not like that the Jews came back, and they want to maybe they will like to move back into the property. So they killed 46 Jews in Kielce. And the sad part of it, should close the door. The sad part of it was that when the Jews made a monument in their memory, they put on so they put on the fact that the Jews were killed by the Polish people. 46 survivors. They came home because they didn't want the Jews to get their property back. So at that time, when they were killed, the Russian was still occupying Poland, and the Russian punished those people responsible for it. Later, when the Russian left, I understand they removed that monument in memory of those Jews who were killed, and they put in their own. There are lying the ashes of 46 people. They didn't mention Jews who died in a skirmish. You know, I couldn't believe it. They were killed by their Polish neighbors. So it's a sad story. Anti-Semitism in Poland is rampant. I was in Warsaw, and they put uh, swastikas on the temple, and they put signs Juden raus. And I saw more anti-Semitism now, and there is no Jews even. There is nobody to blame. They used to blame the Jews for everything happened.
I know that you wanted to mention your father,
Okay.
and so I want to make sure that you include him.
Yeah. Okay, my father died in the camp of Plaszow. He was led to his death because although the Germans felt that he is not worth of living because he was too old, and he was in the early 60s, or maybe he was 59. I cannot exactly pinpoint. He was led to his death. They dig the big pit in Plaszow, and I know a fact because he walked by my barracks, and somebody told me he called out my name. He wanted to say goodbye on the way. He, he was sure he's going to die. I wasn't in the room at that time. Anyway, they dig a big pit, and they put the Jews around. All the Jews who were killed, they had to stand at the edges, and they were shooting at them, and one fell on top of the other, and if they're alive or they could have been alive yet, and they covered them with dirt, and that's how they died in Plaszow. It's another fact that it's so much, you excuse me, I'm getting out of context, but it has to be told. I had a family in a ghetto, was a father, a mother, Spira was their name, and they were sent, and you remember, in Schindler's List, they mentioned the name Huyowa Gurka, where you can see flames and shooting, and the whole Plaszow could hear. There, my uncle, my aunt, my two cousins. My cousin was 8 months pregnant. Her husband. They all died that night on that Huyowa Gurka. So this was my mother's brother, and their family. Uh, then, then I have a family in Rzeszów. It's a city in Poland, and I had a tremendous family there. There was people. They were in fur business. They were in textile business. Prominent people, business people. I didn't hear from anybody there. So there were probably 50, 60 members of the family that I don't know what happened. Uh, I'm trying to think whoever else I want to mention. When it comes Yisco service in the synagogue, I had the same problem. I try to mention all the names. There's so many, it's difficult to keep track.
Mary, is there a message that you would like to leave for your children and your grandchildren?
Excuse me, could you hang up the phone, take it off the hook? No? Okay, there's a message. It's a message that we all have to learn from the experience hour, that we should have more better understanding. The children should be taught to accept, be compassionate to the other race, and to, regardless of religion or color, we should respect your neighbor, and try to understand we all are God's children, and we should love each other and help each other. And it's hard for me. I know that sometimes I cannot. Excuse me. What is the beginning? Okay. One message I can take from my experience, and I hope that people, you know, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. It's that people don't care. That's worse if they don't speak up, because if people stand by and see all that crime, and don't respond it, that's almost that they are now responsible. They're part of it. I hope that from all the experience that we learn how to respect other religion and other color, and we more understanding and give a damn, care, speak up if you see injustice. It could happen to any of us. I had wonderful letters from people who read my article that I was interviewed, and they say, I care. I was only 14 years when the war was, and when I read your article, I feel guilty that my fellow men didn't care. And we love you and wish you all the success in your life in Florida. We're going, it was a nice article, and I hope that we are where I'm willing to speak to children, to the next generation who has to be educated about what can happen if people don't care, don't give a damn, and are indifferent. I stand by. Now we can see in Germany so many people could have done something, and they didn't speak up, they didn't protest, they didn't. And if you are silent sometimes, it makes you as guilty as the people who perform the crime, because we have to do something about it. And I hope in the future that people will care, and be tolerant of each other. And my function will be that I'm willing to speak to children and tell my story, so they are aware, if, to be aware, to speak up, and be aware that somebody has to give a damn, and care about the fellow man. And I hope a crime like this will never happen again. And thank you for listening.
Mary, do you have some pictures to show us?
Oh, I have a lot of pictures. I'm also a painter. I painted these flowers.
Mary, could you tell us about this picture?
These are the two Ferber sisters that I survived the war with. And I was in the death march, I was in the ghetto, I was in Plaszow and Auschwitz, and they are dear friends of mine. And this was soon after the war.
Which one is you?
I'm in the middle. My name is Mary Ferber, and on the left side of me is Rosen, Rosenberg now. She's a Ferberger, and Giza is on the right. Giza is one of Erna Rubinstein's sisters, and Rose. We still keep in touch. You know.
Mary, will you tell us about this picture?
Yes, this picture was done a few months, I would say maybe a year even after the war was over. And these are the four sisters Ferber. It was done in Tichenroy, or maybe even Czechoslovakia. I can't remember exactly. But there is Cecile and Giza and Rose and Erna. They were all Ferber sisters who survived the war with me. They survived many camps with me. We are still very close, and there is one person, and it's me. They're sitting on the left side. There is one person, her name is Bronka, and she lives, I forgot her last name, unfortunately, but we keep in touch with her. She lives in Australia, it's in Melbourne, Australia. She's married and he has children and grandchildren. There are four sisters. One name is Kriegstein, Rosenberg, Rosenbaum, Rubinstein. My name is Ferber, and Bronca from Australia. It was done soon after the war. We still keep in touch in Florida.
Mary, who is in this picture?
This is the sake team from the Krakow group. I forgot the name, but my husband was part of it, and he is the ninth from the left. Counting from the left, he's the ninth in the middle. My husband's name was Jacob Ferber.
What year was this?
This was done about 1938, shortly before the war started. It was a very active group in Sake.
Mary, who are these family members?
Okay, let's start from the middle. In the middle is a picture of the wedding, my youngest son, and it's me in the middle with my two sons, Gabriel Ferber from Buffalo, New York, and Robin Ferber from Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii. And this was at Robin's wedding about 8 years ago. Next to it is the picture on the right is part of our Seder, one of the Seders in my house. And there is my grandson, Gregory, my daughter-in-law, Andrea Ferber. It's me in the back next to her, standing. Then in the red dress is my granddaughter, Sarah. And next to her is her father, my son, Gabriel Ferber. And then is my second grandson, Daniel Ferber. They came visiting from Buffalo and had a Seder with us. This is my granddaughter, Jacqueline Ferber from Hawaii, Honolulu. And her sister, younger sister, is Ariel Ferber. They are the children of Robin Ferber, my youngest son. That is Ariel, who is now 3 years old. She's my granddaughter, the youngest daughter of my son, Robin. They are from Honolulu, Hawaii. The picture now next to the piano are my grandchildren from Buffalo, New York. There is on the left side Gregory. And there is my daughter-in-law Andrea Ferber. There is her brother Jeffrey Schwartz. And there is my granddaughter Sarah. They live in Buffalo, New York.
So this is a picture.
I can take it on. In this picture is me. In the middle is my youngest son, Robin, and my husband, Oliver Shulam, Jack Ferber. This picture is a picture of our family who, God bless them, grow. This is second generation of our children and grandchildren. It's a wedding of my cousin's daughter, Fred Ferber from Michigan, and there's our new family, and there's my sister-in-laws and my children and children of our other relatives. I guess And most they are the Ferber family, original.